We are in week 3 of our Black History Month coverage. Today we're going to talk about Maine's first mixed-race community in Malaga Island. The small community off Phippsburg was eventually evicted in 1912, and educators at the Maine State Museum opened an exhibit to tell the story in 2012. We're going to talk about the families that lived there, how they made a living, and what led to the unfortunate ending.
They were working like anybody else. Fishermen, we've looked at the census records.
Malaga Island, a hidden story of Maine's first mixed-race community in the 20th century.
There were seamstresses, housekeepers.
Joanna Toro is the chief educator at the Maine State Museum and has a passion for history and preserving it. Finding out the why behind certain stories that aren't always discussed, and the story of Malaga Island is just that.
What we wanted to do is really get to know who were those people and what were their lives like. There was a lot of mythology around that story. And, you know, if you kind of back up, you'll learn that this is a small island, about 42 acres, very close to land. It's in the mouth of the New Meadows River in Phippsburg, Maine. This was a difficult time period for the coast of Maine. And so things were economically difficult.
But who were these families and how did they get to the coast of Maine?
So Benjamin Darling is kind of the start of the community. He bought Horse Island, which is nearby, in 1794. And he was an African-American man who is actually married to Sarah Proverbs, who is a woman of white European descent.
So many families moved to Malaga Island to work on the coast of Maine and made the best out of their lives they could. And for the first time for many, color didn't matter. However, things changed as others were informed of the community and financial issues came about. Community members on Malaga Island needed food, medicine, and at a certain point, it became a burden on the town.
People started to think about what's our next economic driver. Tourism, real estate became that. And the idea that maybe they needed to do away with this community came about.
By July 1st, 1912, these community members who had made Malaga Island their home had to relocate elsewhere. And given the time, it wasn't easy to settle anywhere in the U.S.
They're losing their home. That's really, really hard. And it doesn't stop there because often they're being rejected from every other community that they're trying to go to. Some can fit in better than others. Some are then moving actually across the nation to find new lives.
Now we know a little about how this mixed-race community came about in the early 20th century here in Maine. Once these members were evicted from their homes in 1912, let's just say nothing ended in a settling matter. But artifacts, clothing, papers, and so much more was left behind to actually tell the stories of these families. Later on TV5 News, we'll get to know who called Malaga Island their home. Benjamin Darling, an African-American man, settled on Horse Island in Maine in 1794 after he married a woman of white European descent and started a family. Others moved to the area to work, and the first mixed-race community came about called Malaga Island. Unfortunately, members were evicted in 1912, and their story was hidden for decades. But TV5 got the chance to sit down with an educator from the Maine State Museum and check out artifacts that truly tell the story of the people of the island. Let's check it out.
You have somebody's a spoon, you have a pocket knife.
After a mixed-race community was evicted on July 1st, 1912 from Malaga Island, there were artifacts left behind. The chief educator at the Maine State Museum said it's beautiful to look at items that made Malaga Island a home.
It's all these little things that get left behind that make us understand that this is a real person. The items that we're seeing here are from John and Rosella Eason's home. And this is, we have some photographs. He was a carpenter as well as a stonemason.
Archaeological excavation for these fragments took place through the University of Southern Maine. They started in 2002 and continued for 8 years, collecting these everyday items like fish hooks, pots, and buttons to tell a story.
What's repeated in these stories is that this is a community that took care of itself and their neighbors.
The archaeologists focused on the stories of 3 families, the Easons, Griffins, and McKinneys. However, Toro said when people learn about Malaga Island and view the artifacts, it's not just about what you see.
It's not just the objects themselves that tell us the complete story. In archaeology, it's where you find them. right? Are you finding that where it might have been a kitchen? Are you finding that out in a yard? Is that going to be a bottle dump somewhere? You know, even soil can tell you a story, where they're seeing changes in color and the type of soil, and it's becoming more enriched, and they're seeing more snail shells. That was a garden. So all of these are evidence to kind of fill out the bigger story.
As people moved on from Malaga, many never found a home like it. Many racial slurs were used against these families, dehumanizing what they worked hard for. And Toro said herself it's hard to look at, but it's something she believes should be learned to ensure it doesn't happen again.
We need to look at those things. It's important to see where attitudes change and approaches change so that it doesn't happen again.
Toro said the story of Malaga Island is a true Maine story. These were hardworking people who found a way to live and created a home, something we all do every day, no matter what we look like.
Some people might say, this is just African American history. What does this have to do with me? That, you know, my ancestry is Swedish, or I'm French Canadian, or what does this have to be? But we all live in a home, and we all value that, and we all basically go through our day in similar ways. You know, these people piece together their lives. We do that. I know when I started living in Maine, I had 3 jobs. I never knew which direction I was going in. I think a lot of people do that, right? We're kind of known as being these people that just make it work. And they did too. And also there's stories out there that teach us how to be better citizens. And I think this is one of them.
So that's a look at Malaga Island, and that's just scratching the surface. These were everyday people who worked hard, made memories, and enjoyed the most they could out of this life. Many Mainers are now learning that they are descendants of families that lived in Malaga. If you're interested in learning more, you can always go to mainestatemuseum.org, or you can go to Malaga Island yourself and really bask in an incredible historical site. Next week, for our final story on Black History Month, we'll meet an educator who certainly made her mark on the Pine Tree State. Back to you.